Arielle Vaughn reached for the last mango spinach smoothie on the counter, completely unaware that the man behind her, the one in a black t-shirt and running shoes that probably cost more than her rent, was watching her like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. She turned toward the yoga deck, sipping the smoothie like it was the first thing she'd tasted in weeks. Wow, she whispered to herself. Okay, maybe this wellness retreat was worth the 3-month payment plan. Is it good? A voice asked behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, tall. Golden brown hair, blue eyes that looked like they'd been cut from ice and warmed by fire. He was definitely not one of the zen-seeking tech bros she'd been avoiding since she arrived. Yeah, she blinked. I think I just drank happiness. He smiled, not cocky, not fake, just genuine. Well, you took the last one, he said. Guess I'll have to settle for whatever's left. You can have it, she said quickly, holding it out. I didn't even like it that much. You just said it tasted like happiness. Arielle felt her cheeks flush. Yeah, well. I lie sometimes. He laughed, then reached for the backup smoothie beat and something else read. I'm Trey, you, Arielle. You here for the full retreat or just a weekend escape? Full retreat. She took another sip. I needed to escape my life for a while. His eyes flicked to her, sharp but kind. That bad, she hesitated. Let's just say I had a boss who thought unpaid overtime was a love language and a rent increase that could have doubled as a hate crime. That's rough, yeah. But I've got smoothies now, so I'll survive. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but a woman in a linen jumpsuit rang the meditation gong and everyone started heading toward the yoga deck. You going? He asked. I'll probably fall asleep in child's pose, but yeah. They walked together, and she caught his scent clean, expensive, but not in an obvious way. He didn't talk much, just looked ahead with that calm energy that made people feel safe around him. By the time class ended, Arielle was lying flat on her mat, breathing like she'd just run a marathon. I don't think my hips are supposed to stretch like that. Trey, somehow not sweating at all, leaned over. There's a massage tent down by the lake. You should go. Are you offering? He gave a small laugh. That would be wildly inappropriate considering we just met. So you're not a massage therapist, not even close, she raised an eyebrow. What do you do then? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Let's just say. I build things. You're being vague. It's a wellness retreat. Aren't we all supposed to be mysterious and emotionally unavailable? She grinned. You're doing great at it. They walked again, this time toward the lake. The sun glittered off the water and the breeze smelled like eucalyptus and money. She caught herself glancing at him more than once. There was something about the way he moved, confident but not arrogant, relaxed but alert. Like he could disappear at any second or anchor you in place with one word. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why are you here? You don't look like the type who needs healing energy or goat yoga. He tilted his head like the question surprised him. I needed space, quiet. A break from people needing things from me all the time, she nodded slowly. Same. They sat on a bench near the water watching dragonflies zip across the surface. She didn't press him, he didn't push her, and somehow in the silence it felt like something was clicking into place. Later that night, during a group dinner, organic quinoa bowls and something green she couldn't pronounce, she saw him across the room. He was talking to one of the staff members, nodding at something she said. A few people looked at him like they recognized him, but no one said anything. Weird. Back in her cabin, Arielle lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. It had been a long time since she felt that kind of peace around a man, maybe ever. The next morning, she found him again, this time walking the trail near the meditation garden. Stalking me? He asked. Absolutely not. I'm just following you very casually. He laughed again, and something about the sound made her chest feel warm. They walked again. Talked more. She told him about quitting her job, about how she'd always wanted to start her own design business but never had the guts. He listened like it mattered. Like she mattered, and when they parted ways at the fork in the trail, he paused. Dinner tonight, he said. Not quinoa, real dinner. I'll pick you up at 7, she blinked. Pick me up, you mean like a date? He smiled just enough. Yeah, like a date. She stared at him, heart racing. Okay. At 7 sharp, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the retreat gates. The driver stepped out and opened the door for her. That's not normal. Inside the car, Trey waited. No yoga clothes this time. He wore a dark button-up and a watch that looked more expensive than her entire student loan debt. "You clean up nice," she said, slipping in beside him. "You haven't seen anything yet." They drove through winding coastal roads until they reached a hilltop villa overlooking the ocean. Strings of lights danced above a private courtyard where a table for two waited, already set. Arielle blinked. "What is this?" "Dinner," he said simply, leading her out of the car. "Like I promised. You rented a whole villa for this." "I own the villa." She froze. "You what?" "I wanted quiet, remember? I built this place a few years ago. Never thought I'd be bringing someone like you here." Her heart jumped. "Someone like me," he looked at her, his voice suddenly lower. "Someone who makes me forget everything else." She sat down slowly, her hands shaking just a little. "Trey, what exactly do you build?" He hesitated. Then, "I'm the founder of Oxton Development Group. We build luxury hotels, resorts, high-end properties, that kind of thing." She stared. He looked apologetic. "I didn't say anything before because I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me. You're a billionaire." "Yes, and you're here because you wanted quiet, and then I met you, and now I don't want quiet anymore." Arielle didn't say anything. She just stared at him, her heart pounding. He reached across the table, gently brushing his fingers over hers. "I know this is fast, but I haven't stopped thinking about you since that smoothie." She swallowed hard. "You're serious?" "I'm very serious." She looked out at the ocean, then back at him, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like running, she felt like staying. Arielle hadn't expected breakfast to include a private chef plating wild mushroom omelets on a terrace overlooking the Pacific. But there she was, in a silk robe Trey had somehow guessed would fit her perfectly, sipping cold-pressed juice while sunlight danced across the waves. "You're quiet," Trey said from across the table, his voice low and even like everything about him. "Regretting last night," she set her glass down carefully. "No. Just recalibrating." "To what?" "To a world where billionaires casually serve me truffle toast before 9 in the morning." He leaned back, watching her with a look she couldn't quite read. "I didn't bring you here to impress you." She picked up her fork. "It's working anyway." He gave a quiet laugh, more breath than sound. "I brought you here because I liked how you didn't seem impressed. You thought I was unimpressed. You didn't ask me what I did. You didn't Google me when people stared at dinner. And you didn't flinch when I said who I was." "I didn't flinch externally, still counts." She stabbed a piece of avocado. "So what now?" "You fly me to a vineyard in Tuscany and propose over a 5-course lunch. Would that be a deal breaker? I might pass out." He stood and came around to her side of the table, not touching her, just close enough to feel. "I don't want to scare you off. Then don't go full fairy tale on me." "I'm still adjusting to the idea that I'm not dreaming." He tilted his head. "What if I told you I'm not looking for something casual? I'd say most men don't open with foie gras if they are." "I'm serious, Arielle." She stood, brushing invisible crumbs from her dress. "I don't even know what city you live in." "New York, Upper West Side." She blinked. "You're bi-coastal." "I have homes in a few places, but I'm based there." She shook her head. "This is insane. A week ago I was eating instant noodles in an apartment with a broken heater. Now I'm what? Being courted by a man who probably owns half the country's coastline. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything." "I don't. That's what's messing with me." He reached for her hand, slow and deliberate. "Then let's take a walk. Nothing extravagant, just you and me. No chefs, no staff. Just trees and air." She hesitated, then nodded. They walked through a narrow path that led to a grove of tall, silver-barked trees, their leaves whispering in the breeze. The trail curved gently, the kind of place that felt hidden even if it wasn't. Trey didn't say anything at first. He just walked beside her, matching her pace, letting the silence stretch comfortably between them. Finally, she spoke. "You said people always want something from you. What did you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "Investors want returns, architects want approvals, family wants security. Everyone wants access, no one wants quiet. What do you want?" "I want to wake up and not spend the first hour of my day reading legal memos. I want to eat breakfast without 3 phones buzzing. I want someone who doesn't care about what's in my portfolio." She stopped walking. Then why me? Because you looked at me like I was just some guy in line for a smoothie, and then you talked to me like I was human. I didn't know you were anyone else. That's the part I liked. Arielle folded her arms. I don't fit into your world. I don't know which fork goes with which course. I don't shop for clothes with 4-digit price tags. I don't even own heels that aren't from a department store clearance rack. He stepped closer, voice firm but not forceful. And I don't want someone who's been trained to perform. I want someone who's real, who calls me out when I'm being too careful, who doesn't flinch at silence. She looked up at him, caught between disbelief and something softer. Trey, this is fast, I know, and I'm not used to people offering me villas and breakfast and honesty? I don't expect you to trust me overnight, but I'm not playing games. A shadow passed through the trees, dappling his face. You're not what I expected, she said. Neither are you. They walked until they reached a small overlook. Below, the cliffs dropped into whitecaps that crashed against the rocks. He sat on a stone bench, gesturing for her to join. I come out here when I need to think, when things get too loud. She sat beside him, watching the water. I used to go to the roof of my building. It wasn't much. Just tar and vents and an old plastic chair. But for a few minutes, it was quiet. He looked over. What stopped you? The landlord locked the access door after someone complained about noise. You miss it. I miss feeling like I had a place to breathe. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Then stay here with me. Just for a few more days. She turned toward him, startled. Stay, I'll have someone bring your things. We can still go to the retreat during the day or not, whatever you want. I don't have anything fancy to wear. Then wear what you have or nothing at all. I don't care about the clothes. She gave a dry laugh. You really don't play by normal rules, do you? No, but I'm not asking you to follow mine. I'm asking you to write new ones with me. Silence stretched between them again, not tense, just full. She stood, brushing her hands against her sides. I need to think. Take all the time you need. She walked back alone, the sound of the ocean trailing behind her like a question she wasn't ready to answer. Back at the villa, one of the staff greeted her with a small, tasteful envelope. Inside, a handwritten note in ink so smooth it probably came from a fountain pen. I meant what I said. You don't owe me anything, but I want you to stay because you want to. Trey, no signature, no logo, just the words. Arielle sat on the edge of the bed, the note in her lap. She hadn't planned any of this. Not the smoothie, not the man, and definitely not the way her heart felt like it was leaning forward when her head was trying to pull back. And yet, she didn't want to leave, not yet. Arielle stood barefoot on the warm stone balcony, staring out at the horizon where the ocean met the sky in a line so sharp it could have been drawn. Her fingertips brushed the edge of Trey's note, now folded and resting on the table beside a glass of water she hadn't touched. She hadn't planned on staying. She'd told herself she'd go back to the retreat, finish the rest of her prepaid week, and return to her apartment with its crooked blinds and unreliable shower. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the note. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at her, not like she was a vacation fling, but like he was already imagining her in his world. When she stepped back inside, a soft knock landed on the villa's front door. She opened it to find a woman in a crisp, slate-gray uniform holding a linen garment bag. Trey asked that I bring this up for you, the woman said with a gentle smile. He mentioned dinner. Arielle hesitated. Dinner again? He didn't specify the location, just said he'd meet you in the courtyard at sunset. The woman left before Arielle could ask anything else. She unzipped the bag carefully. Inside was a sleek, midnight blue dress, simple but undeniably elegant. No tags, no brand markings, just fabric that felt like it belonged on someone who knew which fork to use without thinking. She ran her fingers over the neckline and took a breath. By the time the light faded into gold, she stepped out into the courtyard. Lanterns floated above the stone path, swaying gently in the breeze. Trey stood near the olive trees, his hands in his pockets. He wore a dark jacket open over a white shirt, undone at the collar. You look like you belong here, he said as she approached. I still feel like I wandered onto the set of someone else's life. Let's make it your life then. I'm not sure it works that way. He gestured toward a small table set beside a low fountain. No servers, no candles. Just a bottle of wine and 2 plates already prepared. I figured we'd skip the staff tonight, I just wanted us. She sat down slowly. You're not what I expected, I get that a lot. No, I mean most powerful men I've met are always performing, you don't seem to need the spotlight. I don't. But I do need moments like this, ones that aren't curated for an audience. She took a sip of wine. So what happens when the world comes calling again? It already has. My assistant's been losing her mind for 48 hours. She raised an eyebrow. And you're just ignoring it. I told her I needed time. She didn't believe me, so I turned off my phone. Her jaw dropped. You turned off your phone, it's been glorious. You run what? A multi-billion-dollar company, and you're just ghosting them. I trust my team. And I trust myself to know when something's worth stepping away for. She studied him. Do you always make decisions this fast? Only when I'm certain. And you're certain about me, he leaned forward. I'm certain that since I met you, nothing else has felt important. She didn't know what to say to that. Instead, she reached for her fork and took a bite of something that tasted like lemon, rosemary, and a decision she hadn't made yet. I'm not good at this, she said finally. The being pursued part. Then don't think of it as being pursued. Think of it as me offering something and you deciding if you want it. What exactly are you offering? He didn't hesitate. A partnership, not built on convenience or image, but on something real. She pushed her plate aside. You don't know me. I know you quit a job that drained you. I know you're brave enough to rebuild without knowing what the foundation looks like yet. I know you think before you speak, and when you do speak, it means something. That's not knowing. That's guessing, it's listening. The wind shifted slightly, bringing the scent of rosemary and salt water. She stared at the fountain, watching the ripples scatter across the surface. Okay, she said slowly, let's say I stay. Then what? Then we see what this is. And when the retreat ends, you come to New York, I'll fly you out, her eyes narrowed. So I become your, what, hidden girlfriend in the penthouse? You become whatever you want to be. I'll introduce you to people, not as an accessory. As someone who owns her own space. She crossed her arms over her chest. You think it's that simple? No, he said, but I think it's worth trying. They sat in silence again, not awkward, not forced, just quiet. After dinner, they walked down the garden steps where low lamps lit the path toward the bluff. The sea below churned, louder now as the wind picked up. She stopped at the edge, her hair whipping around her face. My father used to take me to the coast when I was young, she said. We'd sit on the rocks and he'd tell me the ocean doesn't keep secrets, that it just holds them until you're ready to face them. What secrets are you holding? Trey asked beside her. She didn't look at him. I'm scared of being someone's afterthought. Of being chosen until it's inconvenient. You think I'd do that? I don't know. I barely know you, but I know what it feels like. He stepped closer, not touching her, just standing near. Then tell me what it takes for you to believe I won't disappear. I don't want promises. I want consistency. Then I'll show you. She turned to face him. How? Tomorrow morning. I'm flying back to New York. Business can't wait any longer. She nodded slowly. Makes sense. But he continued, I booked 2 seats, one for me. One for you? Arielle's heart kicked against her ribs. You want me to go with you? Yes. What about my apartment? My things? I can have everything shipped, or we can fly back together to get them. Whatever you need. She stared at him, searching for cracks. But there was nothing in his face but quiet certainty. I'm not a project, she said. I don't want to fix you, I want to build with you. She let out a shaky breath. I can't promise anything. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for a chance. The waves crashed louder now, almost like they were daring her to leap, and after a long moment she said, okay. He didn't celebrate, he didn't gloat. He just reached for her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then we leave at sunrise. The private jet hummed softly beneath Arielle's feet as she stepped inside, the early morning light bleeding through the tall windows like watercolor. She hadn't slept much. Her mind had been a carousel of questions and what-ifs, but none of them had been enough to stop her from walking toward Trey on the tarmac, suitcase in hand, heart in her throat. The cabin wasn't ostentatious, just impossibly sleek cream leather seats, dark wood panels, and the faint scent of citrus and something expensive she couldn't name. Trey stood near the bar, buttoning a jacket with quiet precision. "Right on time," he said as she stepped in. I almost turned around twice, but the driver was terrifyingly punctual. He gave a short laugh. "That's because Marcus used to drive diplomats. He doesn't believe in lateness." She placed her bag down beside one of the seats. "I haven't decided if I'm excited or completely out of my mind. Both is allowed." She glanced out the window as the jet began to taxi. "You know, I've never even been to New York. The closest I've ever gotten was watching movies where people yell a lot and hail taxis like it's an Olympic sport." "You won't need to hail anything," he said, taking the seat across from her. "I'll make sure of that." The jet lifted into the sky, smooth as silk, and for a few long minutes they didn't speak. There was something grounding about the quiet, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. Eventually, he leaned forward. "I've been thinking about what you said last night. About not being someone's afterthought. You won't have to worry about that with me." She met his gaze. "If you want this to work, I need to be part of your real life. Not just your luxury life. You will be. I don't want to be introduced as a girlfriend you fly in when business is light. You won't be introduced like that," he said. "In fact, there's a brunch tomorrow. My board chair is hosting it. It's all spouses, partners, and 1 or 2 actual friends. Come with me." Her brow lifted. "You want me to meet people who know your world inside out already? I want them to see the person who's changing mine." She leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You're either incredibly confident or incredibly reckless. I've built enough skyscrapers to know a strong foundation when I see one." She rolled her eyes. "That was terrible, but accurate." The plane leveled out, and a flight attendant appeared with 2 trays. Arielle opened the silver lid to find a breakfast she could only describe as art. She blinked at the delicately folded eggs, the fruit arranged like a still life painting. "Is this normal for you?" she asked, lifting her fork. "Only when I'm not in a rush. Do you ever eat from a drive-through?" "Once," he said thoughtfully. "In college, it was a disaster. I spilled milkshake on a term sheet." She laughed, for real this time. "You're impossible. I'm hoping to be unforgettable instead." The rest of the flight passed in a blur of conversation that danced between light and unexpectedly deep. He told her about his first failed pitch, the one that cost him a year's worth of savings but taught him more than any class ever had. She told him about the tiny design studio she'd once dreamed of opening with her college roommate before life had pulled them in different directions. By the time they landed, the skyline outside the window glittered like glass and ambition. The car waiting for them was black, glossy, and almost completely silent as it maneuvered through the city streets. Arielle stared out the window, watching the chaos unfold: horns, flashing lights, pedestrians moving like currents. "You really live here?" she asked. "Top floor of a building near Central Park." "It's quiet enough but still closed to the madness." The apartment, or rather, the penthouse, was a lesson in understatement. No gold, no marble, just floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood, and furniture that looked like it had been designed for both comfort and power. Trey set her bag down near the bedroom door. "This is yours too, as long as you want it." She wandered to the window. "I feel like I'm going to wake up and find out I hallucinated this entire week." "You didn't." He came up behind her, his voice quiet. "But if you do, I'll make sure the dream keeps going." She turned to face him. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I've never meant anything more." That night, she lay wrapped in a duvet soft enough to make clouds jealous, watching the city blink below her. Across the room, Trey stood at the window, phone in one hand, his voice low as he spoke about numbers and projections and something involving zoning permits. But when he ended the call and turned around, he wasn't the CEO anymore. He was just him, barefoot, tired, and looking at her like she was the only thing that made sense. The next morning, Arielle dressed in a navy dress from the bag his assistant had left outside the bedroom door. It fit like it had been tailored to her body, even though she'd never given measurements. The brunch was held in a penthouse not unlike his, only this one had a rooftop garden and a view of the river. People in crisp suits and quiet diamonds milled about, laughing with practiced ease. Trey kept his hand at the small of her back the entire time. "This is Arielle," he said more than once, with a tone that left no room for interpretation. She's with me. There were curious glances, a few tight smiles, but no one challenged him. Later, as they stood near the balcony, one of the older women leaned in toward Arielle. He's different, she said, voice low. Since he met you, less guarded, more present. Arielle blinked. I didn't do anything. Sometimes it doesn't take much, just the right person. That night, back in his penthouse, Arielle stood on the balcony, the wind brushing her hair across her face. You still feel like you don't belong? Trey asked, stepping beside her with 2 mugs of tea. I feel like I'm trying to belong in a language I haven't learned yet. Then I'll teach you. He handed her one of the mugs. But only if you promise to teach me how to live outside of boardrooms. She took a sip, watching the steam curl toward the stars. Deal. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, not velvet, not dramatic, just simple, like everything else he did when it mattered. Inside was a ring. Not flashy, not oversized, just elegant and unmistakably chosen. I know it's fast, he said, but I also know what I want, and I want you, not just here, not just now, I want you to build a life with me. She stared at him, the city reflecting in his eyes. You're serious? I've never been more. She looked down at the ring, then up at him, and she nodded. Yes. He didn't cheer, didn't exhale. He just stepped forward and kissed her like the world had finally stopped spinning long enough for something to make sense. And for the first time in her life, Arielle didn't feel like she was borrowing someone else's future. She felt like she was finally writing her own. Rain tapped gently against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the soft patter syncing with Arielle's steady heartbeat as she stood in the center of the open-plan living room, barefoot, wrapped in one of Trey's button-down shirts. The city beyond was hushed in a silver haze, the skyline blurred like a watercolor painting. Trey emerged from the hallway, freshly showered, rolling the sleeves of a pale gray shirt as he crossed to her. You didn't sleep much, he said, his voice still touched with sleep. I was thinking, she admitted, turning toward him, about how different everything feels now. Like I'm in the middle of a life I didn't know I was allowed to want. You are, he said simply, and it's only the beginning. She tilted her head. You really believe that? I believe in what we've started, but I also know real lives aren't built on champagne and city views. They're built on showing up every day and choosing each other. He paused, then reached for her hand. Which is why I had something drawn up. Arielle blinked. Drawn up? He led her to the dining table, where a leather-bound folder sat beside a steaming cup of her favorite tea. Inside, architectural sketches, clean, beautifully rendered, showed a single level, sun-drenched space with high ceilings, plants, and an attached studio. Her breath caught. This is a building I own in Brooklyn, he said. It's quiet, bright, ground floor has been sitting empty for a year. I thought maybe it could be your design studio. She stared down at the sketches, her hands trembling slightly. You remembered everything I said, he nodded. Every word. And the upstairs apartment, yours too if you want it. A place that's yours whether we're together or not, no strings. Her throat tightened. You keep giving me pieces of my own life back. No, he said softly. I'm just making sure you never feel like you don't belong in this one. She closed the folder and looked up at him. I want to build something with you, Trey, but not just a home or a studio. I want to build a life that's ours. Not just yours and not just mine. We already are. A slow smile spread across her lips. Then I guess we have one more thing to design. Later that afternoon, they stepped into the old brick building in Brooklyn, the sound of their footsteps echoing off bare walls. Dust floated in the air, but the light pouring through the windows was golden and alive. I can already see it, she said, stepping through the open space. Natural wood floors, slate countertops, maybe a mix of modern and vintage lighting, and the back wall greenery. Living, breathing texture. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her come alive in the space. You've already moved in, haven't you? In my head, she admitted, laughing. I want this place to have your name on the deed. She turned. Trey, I'm not doing this to impress you, Arielle. I'm doing it because this is what people do when they believe in someone. I believe in you. She walked over and rested her hands on his chest. Then let's do it together, not as some grand gesture, but as the first real blueprint of us. They spent the next few weeks shaping the space, together. Arielle handled the design, the vision, the feel. Trey managed the permits, the contractors, the logistics. They argued over tile colors, shared paint samples over breakfast, and laughed until they cried when the first delivery came with two left-handed sinks. Every day, they learned something new about each other: how she preferred silence when she was overwhelmed, how he walked the city at night when he needed to think. They didn't smooth over differences, they built around them. One crisp Saturday morning, as the last piece of furniture was delivered, Trey walked into the studio holding a velvet pouch. He didn't make a speech. He just placed it in her hand and whispered, "This is the last time I ever want you wondering where you belong." Inside was a delicate key on a gold chain. She blinked up at him, her voice catching. "To the studio, to everything." He pulled her into his arms, and she let herself fall into him, anchoring there. "You're everything I didn't know I needed," she said against his chest. "And you're the only thing I didn't know I was missing," he answered softly. That night, they hosted a quiet gathering in the finished space. No investors, no press, just a handful of friends, hers and his, who toasted not the business, not the design, but the beginning of something rare. Arielle wore a simple white dress, barefoot on the studio floor, wineglass in hand. Trey stood beside her, sleeves rolled up, a rare ease in his posture. As the last guest left, she turned to him. "I think I'm finally ready." "For what?" "For the next step, for all of it." He took her face in his hands, his voice rough. "Then marry me, not someday, not eventually." Now she didn't hesitate. Yes, they didn't wait. The ceremony was held a week later in the very space they'd built, the studio transformed with candles, soft music, and a few dozen people who mattered. Arielle walked down the aisle barefoot, a crown of wildflowers in her hair, her smile steady and luminous. Trey met her at the altar, not in a tux, but in a linen shirt and slacks. He took her hands and said one sentence that made her heart burst wide open. "You are my beginning, my middle, and my end." They kissed to thunderous applause that echoed against the studio's high ceilings, and when they danced, just the two of them, barefoot on the smooth wooden floor, it felt like the world had finally stopped spinning in all the right ways. Years later, the studio became not just a design space, but a home filled with sketches, fabric swatches, and laughter. Trey spent more time there than in boardrooms. Arielle's client list grew quietly, steadily, not because of who she married, but because of who she'd become. They never built an empire. They built something better, a life, piece by piece, beautiful, flawed, vibrant, and entirely their own.